that done, I'll reconvene this meeting of the Board of County Commissioners, as a regular meeting, 1:30 on Wednesday, March 1st. Welcome to the BCC conference room. And we have a short agenda before we get into our strategic plan review and discussion. Ms. Mograski, the first item on the agenda is discussion and approval of transmittal letters for federal fiscal year 2024, congressionally directed spending request from Lane County. And Steve, thank you for pushing this over to Wednesday, because it was originally scheduled to be yesterday, but you graciously said, yeah, so.
Thank you. Chair Barr and Commissioners, thank you so much for the opportunity. This is a work session focused on strategic planning, and I want to make sure that we have ample time to work through that important document. My name is Steve Adams. I am the Policy Director for Lane County within County Administration. Within the policy program is the Intergovernmental Relations Program. Commissioners, thank you for the opportunity. Before you in the package are draft letters that we are assembling for congressionally directed spending requests that we will be submitting this Friday if you all are in approval for 5 projects. The congressionally directed spending this year is going through our 2 senators. We have concurrence on the House side that the House will be considering congressionally directed spending as well. They are a little behind the Senate just in terms of getting the guidance out, but we anticipate that's going to be coming. These are opportunities for members of Congress to identify projects within specific federal funding streams to direct spending to benefit projects of merit. These are colloquially called earmarks, and were a regular feature of federal appropriations for a number of years until about a decade ago. They went away for a period of time and they have since come back. In this past cycle, President Biden signed the federal budget for federal fiscal year 23 that included a number of different projects that we had previously requested. A couple of examples include funding for our multi-use facility that is to be built for immediate occupancy standards, as well as some capital funding for our behavioral health crisis stabilization center. Also within the federal fiscal year 24 budget, we saw specific authorizations, not money, but an authorization to the Army Corps of Engineers to expend dollars on different projects under the Water Resources Development Act, or WRDA, that included some specific projects. So in one of the pots we are presenting to you today will be a request for $5 billion to support the extension of a sewerage pipeline down Highway 99 towards Short Mountain Landfill. So this would pick up the Goshen area, ultimately get to Short Mountain, and once constructed would enable us to provide sewerage system down to support industrial lots that are in that area, as well as bring leachate from Short Mountain Landfill into our regional sewerage system, which currently we truck that down the interstate in 2 trucks, the leachate from the landfill. So there would be a cost savings associated with that, and it would just be crucial infrastructure investment. Secondly, we are requesting funding for an investment in our emergency communications resiliency. This is a joint project for Lane County Sheriff's Office that would provide a seismic and fire hardening for our infrastructure on top of Bear Mountain, which is just west of Cottage Grove. This is an important link in our interoperability, and this would also provide radio equipment for 10 rural fire districts across Lane County specifically. We are requesting funding for building our community restoration capacity for behavioral health that is offered by our parole and probation program specifically. So these would be federal dollars from SAMHSA to build their capacity. This would be to build human capital, training, equipment, and specific programmatic investments. And then we are likewise going back and requesting additional investments both in the stabilization center from a state side to funding to help us put that project together. From a capital perspective and an operating perspective is likely to be delayed. It's not likely that the legislature will be making those investments in this cycle. It's quite likely that that's going to be next year before we actually get to that piece. There's additional federal rulemaking or state level rulemaking that needs to happen to make that operation work as well. And then we're making an additional request for an additional capital investment in our multi-use facility as well. So those are the 5 projects that the staff and the management team have put together and are bringing to this board for a request for your approval to have Chair Farr as our board chair. Sign.
Well, thank you for the presentation, Steve. And each of these letters will be customized for each of the 3 delegates that we're addressing them to.
That is correct.
And just a quick question. I noticed no actual dollar amounts in there. That is TBD.
It is, Chair Farr, we're still working for these. Each of these are going to be in the neighborhood of $1.5 million, with the exception of the environmental projects program. So this is the a $5 million ask for the Goshen pipeline.
Smashing. So I'll look to the board for questions or comments regarding, this is a request to give authorization to the chair to sign the letters in the entire board in between regular meetings. So. Commissioner.
Is the River Road revetments not part of this? Is that something different that we've been talking about?
That will, Chair Farr, Commissioner, that will be a separate process. So there's 2 different pots of dollars that were authorized under the Water Resources Development Act, WRDA. One is $5 million projects. The other is a $50 million regional project within which we're included. So under the rules of WRDA and specifically the provisions, each of these pots are meant for different things. The revetment work is more flood control, and that would go into that bigger regional pot. So we will have to engage with the Army Corps actively. This is going to be a little bit longer of a process. These environmental infrastructure projects are a little easier, a little bit more arcane. We have a very adept lobbyist in DC, Smith, Dawson Andrews, who really is quite good at helping to identify opportunities for us to make good progress.
That cover your question?
Yes. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation. Just 2 points. One, just to clarify, these letters are really the first step in the multi-step process, right? It's really getting the projects on the radar of our delegation, right? And then the work begins, right? Is that right? So,
Chair Farr, indeed, Commissioner, we have a portal and a 9 p.m. Friday night deadline to submit these. So it's really very cursory, 250 word narrative, some rough budget numbers, some letters of support, and they go in. And so this is the first step, and then there's a lot of work that will follow.
great, thank you. And right, if they take up one or all or somewhere in between, declare interest, right? Then my other question with the behavioral health stabilization, and you mentioned statewide funding, I want to make sure I'm understanding you. Are you saying you don't foresee action this session, or even any action this session, there wouldn't be any dollars available until next?
So Chair Farr, Commissioner, it is as of this time, it looks like most of the legislative funding thrust is really on mobile crisis, standing up the 988 call center and funding mobile crisis. We saw specific recommendations that were coming from the agency back in the fall, but of course we have a new administration and we had a new governor's budget. We did not see a specific mark within the governor's recommended budget for stabilization centers. Neither capital nor operating. That doesn't necessarily mean that's where the legislature is going to land, but it kind of feels like maybe they're a step, maybe our thinking around the stabilization center may have been a step further downfield than where the legislature is right now in terms of trying to put together a funding package for
follow up. My guess is that is less about a lack of recognition of how important that is than just other priorities superseding around housing and homelessness. Is the guess.
And Chair Barr, I believe that is exactly right. I think that is there's a huge amount of bandwidth focused. And I think, to be fair, the new behavioral health director only begun her job on Monday, like this past week, or this current week. So she's only there. I would anticipate we'll see, and I think the other piece to keep in mind is that we have a Medicaid waiver, the 1115, that will enable us to pay for some of these services out of that. However, OHA has to do rulemaking, and that's likely going to take most of this calendar year to get that done. So that's the operating side, and we would, of course, want to build something until we understood that we can operate on the back end as well.
Thank you.
Thanks, Vice Chair. That'll cover your questions. On the mobile crisis response, it's interesting to see how all eyes really are right here across the nation because of the forefront that Kahoot has given us. And as they look closer, they'll realize the fragility of a crisis response, that it's not going to be effective unless it's backed up by in cases where it's necessary backed up by police, and also if there's no place to take the people to who are in crisis, just leave them on the streets. And as we get more refined in that, people will understand that just going out and addressing the person yelling in the middle of the street doesn't solve the issue, but it does hopefully keep it from being transported to jail or to the ER. So anyway, that's not what we're here to talk about today. We're here to talk about these letters and that. So any further discussion? So what do you need? Is there a motion here? Hang on a second. Get back to my agenda.
I just see a discussion and approval. So do
It
you
is.
just need a head nod approval? I don't see an order number.
I believe that case.
Hi, everyone. We just need head nods, or you can make an announcement.
Okay, head nods. Looks like you have a unanimous head nod on that. Okay, let's choreograph this. 1, 2, 3. Okay.
Thank you very much.
All right, Steve, thank you very much once again for being here today. At which point we'll move to item 1B, which is a work session on a strategic plan review and discussion. And Steve Mokraski, this is your staff. Judy Williams has been, it's amazing how much weight we carry on this every single day. I always look at you for your smiling face, and you make it all seem so easy. Steve Mokraski, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Chair and Commissioners. Yeah, I think we scheduled 90 minutes for this. So Judy's going to walk through a presentation, maybe 20 or 30 minutes, depending on if you have questions. I don't know if the new commissioners have been in a work session like this. This is a nice place, a little bit different setting than down this area in Harris Hall. We really want to encourage discussion, just question and flow of discussion around what we think is a really important part of the work that we get done here in Lane County. I'll just say briefly that since 2014-15, we have really dialed in this work around our strategic plan and making sure that the board has established what its priorities and goals are. It's important for the rest of the organization, for me, and for our staff and the rest of the organization to know what the board's priorities are, objectives and initiatives that we're focused on, really so that we can focus the limited staff and resources and time that we have to accomplish the priorities of the board. So what we want to do today is this is the first opportunity. We feel really strongly this is a living, breathing document that is always subject to change. I will acknowledge that I think in the last couple of years, particularly because of the pandemic and the wildfires, it created such an intense focus for our organization, so much of our organization. We've drifted a little bit from the strategic plan being really the primary focus of what we're doing. And it's my desire certainly that we lean more into this effort now as we sort of come out of the focus of the pandemic and some of these really big crises, and we start to sort of reset where we're at as an organization and the direction that we want to go, that we reinvest in this strategic planning effort know that this is something ultimately that I and the leadership, the directors and departments and staff in the organization, we want to be able to have the clarity from the board about the things that are most important to accomplish, because there's no shortage of work for everyone to do, right? Plenty of work. The question is, what is the work that we're focused on? And particularly as it relates to the board, as the representatives of the community, the elected representatives of the community that come together as our governing body, we want to know from you, what is it that you want? What are the big areas that you really want to make traction on in the next couple of years? So ultimately, this is your plan, right? And this is what we will use as our roadmap to focus the limited resources and staff that we have over the next couple of years. So I just want to set that context, encourage you to ask questions or probe as Judy walks through the presentation, and then we're going to leave plenty of time for just discussion with the board. There's not really any action we're asking for today, but we do want to just get a sense from you of like, does this resonate? Is this working for you? What isn't working? Are there things that aren't reflected on you think should be? Should we be pulling things off here because we've either accomplished them or there's a different direction? So that's the discussion we want to have today.
And if I may, Steve,
Yeah.
Barbie, Judy, before you start, you mentioned that the last couple of years we've had stresses on the outside. We've had Holiday Farm, we've had COVID, and really things beyond that. But what I want to point out, Steve, is that even during that time, and I say this is suddenly finding myself in the senior commissioner role, the season one, I've been here through well, since the outset of this, that you really have, staff has really kept the strategic plan on the radar screen, and where sometimes it's not really the North Star, it's certainly at least the second star to the right, that staff has really kept an eyeball on it, and really our strategic plan has remained intact, and the tactics that we're using, whether it be for Holiday Farm or whether it be for COVID, really are wrapped inside of our strategic plan very nicely, and that's from my observations here. So
A specific example of that, just to kind of to paint that picture, thank you, Chair, for that is, we've had a strategic plan here that Judy's going to walk through that has really consistently over the 9 years that I've been with Wayne County, focused on, our first sort of priority area, strategic priority area is a safe and healthy county, which means to develop an equitable and integrated approach to health, behavioral health, public safety, and homelessness, so that all residents are safe, healthy, housed, and health outcomes are improved. Well, then we talk about specific things like investment in our public safety. The board has been very clear about, we continue to have a public safety system that is underfunded. Well, then a specific example of what does that mean? How does that translate into action? A couple of years ago, when we had some additional secure rural schools funding that was made available to the county, the sheriff and the public works director and I sat down, because SRS dollars are typically divided between public safety and the road fund. Well, the sheriff and the public works director and I sat down and said, we have some of this one-time money that's available. Should we be thinking about, since the board has said public safety is such a priority, an additional investment over a 5-year period of time? So we came up with this concept of taking, I think it was a total of $8 million in funding 5 years of enhanced rural patrols. And we brought that to the board, and the board approved that. I believe it was a unanimous approval a couple of years ago for that additional investment in sheriff patrols. Well, that was a huge investment and a huge policy decision to take that, but we crafted the proposal. We didn't have to come and ask the board, do you want us to pursue something like this? Because you already had said it was a priority. So we had the conversation, we developed the proposal, we brought it to the board, I think over a couple of conversations. But there's several examples like that where we pursue really big initiatives without having to stop and pause and go, no, we can't move any further. We got to ask the board what they think, because we should know where the board's at, right? As we're working on these things. And this gives us the ability to execute on those strategic priorities and goals. And I think allows us to move really quickly. Another example is when we acquired the 100 River Avenue facility, the former VA clinic on 100 River Avenue, right? Right at the beginning of COVID, if you remember, April of 2020, COVID is happening. It's like, why are you buying the building? Well, we said, we've been looking at a shelter and navigation center. We know this is a gap and a need that's been identified through consultants. We see an opportunity to move. We ultimately got federal dollars to pay for the acquisition. We got federal dollars to renovate the building and operate as a COVID recovery facility for homeless individuals. Fast forward, and it's been renovated into the recreation shelter. All of that happened like quickly in government time, right? In public sector time, because we knew, right, the people that were making the work happen knew what the policy priorities were from the Board of Commissioners. So I just, couple examples there of why this is not something that we want to do to sit on a shelf. We want to be able to use it to drive big changes on high priorities of public safety and poverty and homelessness and those kind of things. Okay, that's enough.
Oh, you can go on forever. I'm open to this.
So good afternoon, Judy Williams. I'm the strategy and integration manager, and Steve highlighted many excellent points, and I will take the time to try and walk through the plan as well, just to kind of introduce before we get into the specifics. And while it looks like I have controls, I don't. So I'm going to have to say slide Diana. So if you could, and then while I'm here today, kind of that messenger, and I've been helping guide that work, as it's so crucial to our organization, is this a huge team effort, commissioners, leaders, directors, and we do have several directors on the line as well watching, and if there's specific questions too, so they're here and available. So a quick overview today is just really, Steve highlighted that crucial purpose of why we have strategic plans. So talking about the purpose, history a little bit, process that we took in getting this new strategic plan together, briefly touching on some of the results from the employee and community survey that we did with this effort, walking through kind of what led from those early survey results, some of the brainstorming processes that happened. We're going to touch on those priorities, goals, and objectives as Steve mentioned, and then talking a little bit about tracking the plan. And many of you have familiarity with how we've done that in the past. I will talk on some ways to do that for the future, and then definitely opening it up for feedback or next steps, walking through any of those tweaks like Steve mentioned. So with that, next slide, Diana, thank you. So really briefly, this was covered a little bit already. So why we have that strategic plan, and I think our organization is really used to having one, really used to a one feature that really sifts it down into like, what is our organization's focus? Why are we headed in a certain way? What's the roadmap? Where can we all kind of have that unified approach as to where we're going in the organization and what our priorities are? And some of those key accomplishments we did speak to already, well, the specific, public safety ones, buying building, moving next steps with public safety and enhancement of patrol. To kind of step back a little bit too, each strategic plan is unique and different too based on the time. And while early in 2014 our organization was kind of coming from a lot of results that our county administrator before Steve came on board was fired, and there were a lot of community trust issues. And I think we really tried to hone in on a new strategic plan that focused on our external partners to rebuilding that trust, rebuilding partnerships, and kind of repairing and setting that new stage and new course. That next strategic plan in 2018 really built off of that current strategic plan, but really focused a little bit more inward. So again, we had gone through a strike just before that, and so really trying to, get that scan of the organization. Where are people at? What do we need to focus in on, and how do we build that into the strategic plan? And then the last one in 2018, we did a revision, and then this one here, I think it's a really good blend of that external and internal, kind of taking that plan to that next level of, what are we hearing from the community? What are we hearing from their employees? And what is there to change? And as Steve mentioned, it's as we check in each time before we take on a new process, it's definitely, we scan and ask those questions, you know, how is this working? Do you utilize that strategic plan on a daily basis, or if not, how could you use something better? And consensus has really been, let's not scrap this and start over with a new plan each time, but build upon each additional plan that we do take on. And so next slide, Diana, I'm gonna talk a little bit about the process that led us up to the plan that we have now. So again, getting that early input from both commissioners, from directors, from the community. Again, do we scrap it and start over? But again, keeping and building upon what we've had, taking it to that next level, being really as intentional as we can. We typically do hire a facilitator, and we did a competitive process. We brought somebody in to help guide some of those community discussions, surveys, and whatnot, and help us sift through some of the data. So we kicked off in fall of 2021, and while we thought we might have some of the opportunities with COVID to be able to engage a little bit more robustly in person, that wasn't quite the case. You know, we tried a couple times and then really fell to a lot of the virtual opportunities for engagement, but we had some really great community survey results coming back for input. We had, say, like 800 or so employees that responded to our survey. So really trying to get, you know, what are those priorities? What do you see us in the future? What should we be focusing on, and getting that data? We had several, I think 7 community and employee forums. So kind of getting those robust discussions from community members and from employees to really tease out what they're looking for and what are those issues that are coming up. And some really good, interesting and unique creative solutions that came out of some of those forums. And I'll speak to those in a little bit, but it was just really good, genuine conversations from community members that were all dealing with housing and really just trying to help one another while also trying to give input on the process. So really good discussion that happened. We did stakeholder interviews, several presentations, really trying to invite and get as much feedback so that, you know, what is it that we're missing from the plan? Please, you know, have open houses to really have several stages of like, here's the draft, here's a final, here's at this stage, getting that feedback from both the community and the employees. Next slide, please, Diana. So briefly, I'm going to just show a couple slides of the results, and this is just super high level, but when we did look to the community, and more of the results are on the website too, but to highlight kind of the main focus areas. So the first one is obvious. Affordable housing really stood out as it has over the last few years. Public safety, following community health and well-being, maintaining outdoor spaces and parks, and whatnot. And next slide, Diana. This is results of the employee survey. Again, on that big picture bucket priority. So similar, although it's not organized in the same way, but affordable housing in the pink does stand out as the #1 still. Second, public safety, business environment for local businesses, outdoor spaces, community health and well-being, all very important items. Next slide, and one last slide on the results, and then I'll walk through what we did with that. So this is just a quick comparison side by side of same kind of questions. So what do you see in the next 5 years that Lane County needs to focus on? Where do we focus our efforts? What's coming up? And you know, homelessness is the top here. High cost of living, housing, affordability, crime, economy, traffic congestion, community divisiveness, So just, these are just very quick highlights and what we did with this data, again, with the help of a facilitator and folks that were able to help us analyze some of this data. We had an all staff kind of leadership summit. It was in person. That was lovely to have in person. We walked through a lot of these survey results and then just really took the time in groups and brainstorming, you know, what are those priorities? What are the top priorities for everyone?
Is it okay if we intersperse a question here and there?
Absolutely, absolutely. Just
Question trigger as well.
Just, can you remind me process-wise, these were a menu of preset options and people were asked to rank them in priority order, right? Both the public and employees, but there were some just open inquiry questions where people just put in their own idea or statement of what they thought priorities was. Is that right?
Yes, absolutely. Great question, Chair Carter, Commissioner Figure, but I kind of skipped over that. In addition to the survey results, for some were very, you know, check the box, but open-ended. We've had a pretty robust kind of social pinpoint, kind of an engagement website where you could go in and interact, kind of like Facebook, where you put comments like, here's what's important to me, and people could like it and comment, and you could see it organized kind of live as people were commenting. So definitely many ways to get additional input besides just those 4 items. Yeah, and feel free anytime to stop me or ask me a question. So in that leadership summit that we had, this was you know, key staff, leaders, commissioners, a lot of our management team all coming together to really brainstorm and knowing that it had been a couple of years for people already at that time, you know, dealing with COVID and the impacts, dealing with the wildfire and you know, the new normal of work environment, and really tried to like embrace how people were feeling at that time and try and take that plan again to that next level based on how the organization looked and how people were feeling and coming to work and making sure that we took the time to prioritize. So it was a great time to be able to be in person and really focus in on those priorities. And so next slide, Diana, what came out of that was really that there were several other brainstorm sessions, but really going back to, yes, these big bucket priorities are very important, and we did talk about tweaking them a little bit or shifting, but really what stood out is based on that input from all areas, keeping that safe and healthy county priority as just a very crucial one. No changes there. That second priority of vibrant communities, that bucket was also talked about quite a bit. You know, do we need to adjust it or, but it really resonated with folks, and based on what we were seeing in the survey results, fit kind of nicely in that priority. Robust infrastructure stayed the same as well as, you know, both all sides of our infrastructure, buildings and whatnot, and broadband, et cetera. How do we prepare community emergency preparedness in that bucket as well? And then the final one is one that we did adjust, our people and organizational health, and kind of speaking to the, you know, the environment at the time and how our organization was doing. There was a lot of good dialogue and discussions on just really trying to take the time and be intentional with our employees. And so it changed. It used to be our people and partnerships. And so while partnerships is still a very crucial component of what the work we do on a day-to-day basis, and I'll speak to kind of where that fits in now, shifting out the partnership and really honing in on our people and organizational health. So that's the one that changed the most to really focus in there. Next slide, Diana, and we'll walk through the goals of each of those 4 priorities and some of the big kind of buckets that fall under each of those. So with, again, more survey and data and brainstorming sessions, coming up with the goal here for Safe and Healthy County, which is develop an equitable and integrated approach to health, behavioral health, public safety, and homelessness, so that all residents are safe, healthy, housed, and health outcomes are improved. So while that is a lot and all encompassing, and we'll achieve that in pretty soon. And it's a goal, you know, something that we strive for, but it also, it captured the broadness of how all of the items that fit under that priority. So, well, we have 7 kind of objectives, which are behavioral health, homelessness, and public safety. There's many objectives under that because of that key like interconnectedness of those 3 areas in and of themselves. Public safety and service delivery, you know, the public safety repair plan, the levy, renewal of the levy. Those priorities are juvenile and adult supervision. So at the time, they were separated and some focus and priority of integrating into one new department. Excuse me. Homelessness, definitely several objectives under that category. Health promotion, so really looking at expanding dental, mental, and day-to-day wellness opportunities in and around the community. Community partnerships program, which is in the public health field, and then traffic safety to really highlight the need around reducing the traffic fatalities. And the next slide, Diana. So vibrant communities, that second priority. This is the goal here. Invest in Lane County residents by fostering engaged communities with affordable housing options, equitable opportunities, economic vitality, and a healthy environment. And I like to put it all in there, but it really, that interplay too within housing, but also the economy, environment, and how do we weave all of those in. So it's done by these 6 objectives here, where affordable housing, many action items under that one, definitely. We have had an action plan that's very specifically outlines next steps in affordable housing. Our economic development, equity, and environment category, multi-use community facility, civic engagement. So really talking about, again, in 2021, and as this was in development, you know, how do we, what's different and new? How do we engage the community and get to hear from as many people as we can, and have it be authentic and reach people where they're at with this kind of new virtual environments as well. So trying to revamp some engagement opportunities with a definite focus on rural communities too. Just that's a big priority and highlighted for. And then land management. So really elevating a specific one here. This is a little bit new to this plan, but just really highlighting that investment in land management and in terms of both resource, adequate staffing, sustainable funding, and also speaking to pieces that can help with the customer service aspect as well. Next slide, Diana. So the robust infrastructure. The goal here is maintain and invest in resilient infrastructure that creates the highest return for safety, community connectivity, enjoyment of life, and local economic success. So the areas here, 6 objectives: portable broadband, accessible data, preparedness and operational readiness, disaster recovery. Really, how do we plan forward to really track and in terms of cost recovery for these disasters? So having that plan in place. County infrastructure and facilities, utilizing all of our buildings and infrastructure to that kind of highest and best use. Are we doing the most in the most effective way with our infrastructure? And then core services. So trying to highlight the key day-to-day core services that are kind of that infrastructure of our organization. And then final priority, Diana, next slide, are people and organizational health. So the goal here is invest in our employees who are the backbone of the organization and invest in our systems and organizational health so that employees can thrive and residents can experience a more effective government. So as I mentioned before, just really focusing on both the employees and the organizational health. So these 5 priorities here are employee well-being, positive workplace culture, inclusive, diverse, and equitable workforce, financial stability and health, trying to increase our data and metrics around the financial aspect, capacity of our internal services. So as we've grown over time, or as we've taken on new services, or perhaps just really focusing on how do we best do that to sustain ourselves and our system. So it's kind of the wheels on the bus. Can we continue to operate and have the internal administrative setup so that we're effectively managing the organization? And then fulfilling the goals of the strategic plans, which we put that in here as a way to track just success and reporting, but also capacity, and do we have that to move forward with the strategic. So those are kind of those bigger objectives under each of those. Question?
No.
A couple more slides and then I'll turn it over. So next slide, Diana. So this is all of this sifted into those priorities and where we're headed. We always look at what I call like the heart of our organization and the vision, mission, all of those aspects, and I'll talk through those. But we always look at those too when we're taking on that new strategic plan, and we walk through them. Does this still resonate? Do we need to have some changes, and how does it resonate? So our vision, there were no changes to our vision or mission at this time. It is Lake County is the best place in which all can live, work, and play. So this is that just that audacious goal, something that we strive for. And our mission is we responsibly manage available resources to deliver vital community-centered services with passion, drive, and focus. And again, keeping that as well as it really resonated with folks. And then the next that I'll highlight, really good conversations again that happened at the leadership summit and throughout to really check in and see, do these still resonate? Do we need to change them? But the purpose is one that we added of the strategic plan prior. And these were, I think it was a key add that really created that cohesion in the organization. I think it's brief, it's to improve lives, but it's something that everybody in the organization can get on board with and have that connectedness, whether you're like the road maintenance person or front desk reception, in legal, a deputy, anybody and everybody has that kind of shared purpose of improving lives, and everybody felt to continue to keep that. It really, our core behaviors also stayed the same, and those were added at the prior strategic plan. Again, really helpful key core behaviors that speak to the employees that we have in the organization and the employees that we want to continue to keep and bring in. So having that passion to serve in the work that we do, that's so important. Driven to connect, with that relationship piece, and focus on solutions. And so again, we checked in, and everybody, these are really so weaved into the organization in terms of recruitment, interview questions, the performance conversations that take place, and core behavior coins that we have, and they're just, people really resonated and really wanted to keep these, and as they stood out quite very much for everybody. So the final item are what's called our strategic lenses. We got started with this at the plan prior to this, and it kind of links back to, you know, well, we have this plan, we have all these priorities, we're gonna do all of these things. What are those kind of key things that we have to think of on a day-to-day basis? Or like, how do you look at something or analyze something or make a decision? What are those key pieces for an organization that we should all be asking before we do something? And these changed a little bit, but not drastically. So stewardship of resources is really, you know, both the financial resources components and natural resources. So are there lenses, or, you know, can we come up with a few key questions like, is this a good, wise investment, or are we looking at doing this the most effective way? Having those like very brief questions that we can ask before making a decision. So these are our strategic lenses. Equity is one that is probably the most developed, and in the operationalizing stage. And then collective impact is another one that we need to do additional work to create those kind of questions, but it gets at, you know, how do we do the best work we can, knowing we work so well with partnerships and we need to continue that, but like homelessness, for instance, well, we could have a plan and we're working on something at the county, the city could too, many cities. How are we all doing this in a unified approach, or how can we, you know, have that collective impact in order to make change most effectively? So those are our kind of, again, like the part of the organization, mission, vision, those purpose, core behaviors and strategic lenses that I think that have really stood the test of time, and we've made little tweaks, but are quite meaningful and impactful to the organization. The next slide, Diana. So all of this kind of leads into, while we do like a one pager, and I think our organization is used to following the strategic plan, you know, taking a quick one pager along with you at a conference or meetings and whatnot, and kind of here's our priorities, our goals. And so this is kind of all encompassing of our mission, purpose, vision, and those priorities, and some of the buckets that I spelled out earlier on this one pager. And then I know the next slide is a bit much, but next slide, Diana. So it's just the back side of this. I'm gonna read each one, but it's just the back side of our one pager, because we do utilize this so frequently that people do walk around and this is what they're working on, and it's helpful to have like a streamlined version of you know, this booklet. So while it's the same detail that's in here with those priorities, the objectives, and then what are we doing in each of those?
It's the last page of our agenda.
Yes, last page.
It's called the county cheat sheet.
There you go.
Yes, I love it. Yeah, so a cheat sheet on where does this all mean, and how can you kind of sift it down and make the most sense of it, but also look back to how we're doing and what some of those specific action items are. Next slide, and then I'll come back to this, and I have handouts too, so that you can save your eyes. 2 more slides, and then I am done. So quickly on the alignment of the plan, and trying to speak to how we do this effort as an organization, and we really try to get our priorities, objectives, and everything right, and based on what we've heard from the data. But then how do we take it to that next level of having that alignment? So we do, you know, report in our budget document, we speak to the strategic plan, we have metrics in our budget document, goals that are aligned to the strategic plan. There's many other organization plans, so not necessarily department plans. We do have those, but those organizational plans are like our community health improvement plan that's very aligned to this plan. And that alignment is just really that interconnectedness, so it's not, you know, deviating from what our goals are, but having that shared focus of, here's what we said we're gonna do, does this align with the strategic plan? And having that cohesion. The transportation safety action plan, traveling county, as you heard from yesterday at the board, our emergency operations plan, which is gonna be updated here soon. Natural hazard mitigation plan, also in the works, disaster recovery plan, kind of almost too many to list, but there's many in the organization that have that alignment with this strategic plan and cascading down. And then specific department plans. While not every department has a plan, many do and have their own plan that really does align. Some departments, you know, fall back to here's where I can see myself and the work I do captured in the strategic plan. And then some divisions also have their strategic plans too. So next slide, Diana, and then I have a handout and then I'll open it up. So it's kind of next steps is talking through an idea that gets back to tracking and a handout that I'll give out soon. So one idea, what we've typically done is, now that we've had like this cheat sheet, we've come to the board either quarterly or as close to quarterly as possible and had like a red, yellow, green scorecard where you could easily walk around with where are we at with some of this. We're doing regular updates and we want to get back to that. There hasn't been that recently based on projects and capacity, but that we've got a small committee established and trying to work towards how do we now sift 74 really good, you know, cheat sheet items. How do we make something accessible, trackable, reportable? And so one idea is to have two buckets that really help us prioritize, you know, what do you want to see on a regular basis? There are some that could be kind of a department reporting level initiative, and some that are board level initiative that we report regularly on. That doesn't mean the department ones go away, but it's really, you know, what do we bring forward to you on a regular basis, and what do we focus and spend our time looking at honing down those measures and making that really, that's a key thing that I guess I would say that we've struggled in the past, taking the time to have good measures and then working towards that so we can report on our successes. So taking the time to have these done well, but maybe down to like 24, 25 instead of 74, that we come back to you regularly with, you know, maybe additional just red, yellow, green, but like exact tracking on that level. So solidifying those measures, coming to the board at least twice a year, potentially like, you know, May and October as ideas, and then an annual review, maybe towards November, December, end of the year, a check-in. What might we need to adjust or tweak going into the new year? Are there some other, you know, crisis or new priorities that we need to weave in? So that's all that I have. I will, before turning it over to you, I'll just hand out a copy of this draft idea, and it is an idea. It's just a way to kind of sift the 74 down to 20 something, so you can see like kind of the gray would be a department level. And one aspect of potential feedback today, it's a little bit small. Yeah, so it doesn't, you don't have to give feedback on that today, but it was just it might help, again, streamline so that it won't be so tiny coming
But
back.
this hasn't changed in recent months, as it's the same,
Yeah.
the same ones that I have hanging on my
Yeah,
wall.
yeah, the shade.
Same exact, it's just shaded to kind of show you like what might be at that bucket of a department level reporting, so that when you see them on the semi-annual basis, you're only seeing about at least those 25, and we've had discussions on, you know, can we at least do like a red, yellow, green on the other department ones? And how do we set up that best tracking system to do that effectively? So with that, this was just that idea. If you wanted to have feedback on any of those, the questions about the process or the plan, happy to entertain any of that, or be specific on tracking moving forward and what you might like to see, or timing of updates and whatnot. So I gave a lot to you. Thank you for your time and walking through it. I know it's probably sometimes helpful and just to sit and read a 12-page document, but it's really a strategic plan that's important to our organization and the people here that use it. But as we've said, this is a living document that we want to make sure that we're always keeping up with priorities and needs. So thank you for your time and turn over back to you.
Well, Judy, that was a lot of information. It's all contained and it's all documented right here. But really what I want to say about this is not something that was just, you didn't sit down and write it. This has, it has evolved. It's evolved to meet the needs of the candidates. I mean, as we've gone, new things have come up. For instance, we had a little bit of a fire, you know, so our strategic plan adjusted to really meet the needs of the things that are really happening now in the community. 4 years ago, we had 2 new commissioners, and at that time, we looked at the strategic plan in great depth because those 2 new commissioners, Commissioner Buck being one of them, weren't a part of the initial writing of the strategic plan. And by and large, we didn't change the plan very much at all. We took a screwdriver here and a wrench there, you know, and added, placed a little bit more emphasis on a couple of things in there. But by and large, it hasn't changed very much, Steve, since we had that meeting out at River Ridge Golf Course. You know, when we got everybody in the room out there, and Kevin Matthews said he was a spokesman for Lane County. So, you know, and we can go back to the record and see what was actually said there. But you know, a lot of people were there. A lot of people were really deeply involved in that conversation, and it really went into Steve. You fashioned a plan. It really was a living, working document that anybody doing their job can look at what they're doing at this moment in time and say, where does it fit in the strategic plan? And if it doesn't, then that you flip yourself and why am I doing it? And the key to me in this whole thing is the new addition that we've just placed in. And that is, where is it? Yeah, this is hard to remember, to improve lives. So, and the things that we're doing is not improving lives and why we're doing it. Because that really is the key measurement of what we're doing. So at this point in time, you know, we have 2 new commissioners once again, who are looking at this in some ways for the first time, and in some ways, you're going to be critical about what is in there, and you know, identify things that aren't in there, and that is really fully encouraged. But I think the important thing that I've gotten out of this, Steve, is that when you came on board, Lane County didn't have a strategic plan. Now, when I said that out loud, the commissioners who were there when I wrote it, prior to my being elected, said, yes, we do have a strategic plan. They brought it down. It wasn't anything. They took it off the shelf, blew the dust off it, and said, here, there it is. Well, there's no dust on this plan. And that really is the key to an effective working strategic plan. And it doesn't take quick twists and turns. We have strategies that are involved in the tactics that go into the strategies. You see new tactics every single day, and other tactics are completed, and other tactics get changed a little bit based on different resources, different needs, and different things that people in the community identify. But Judy, you did a great job. You really did, because everything is written right down here, and it's a lot. You just talk 45 minutes, and you eye on them every single word that you said. So with that, let's talk about it a little bit. Back Commissioner Buck. Heather.
So I very much like the large buckets that we have and the large, categories within each of buckets. I think they still apply today as they have for years now. What we'll see is in this laundry list of things to do, that some get completed, and then sometimes we'll add something that we know is a new emerging issue in the county and put an action item in here. So for example, under Safe Healthy Counties, we'll see, invest in at least 2 more permanent supportive housing facilities. So Homes for Good, with our assistance, we invest in those, and so we've been able to work on those. And now it's time to reevaluate that and say, okay, do we cross that out, say it's done, and move on to adding something else, or do we think bigger kind of person, and what else could we do to advance that objective? And so that's really the tweaks I see going forward in the plan overall, and that will, we can all assist in that with our critical eye and review each of these line items and say, okay, I think we've accomplished this one, or this one doesn't apply anymore, or I have an idea that is a community concern. And do we collectively want to have that? I really like the next steps going forward, because although we've tweaked this over the years, it really does come down to, are we accomplishing things that we've listed on here, or is this just a piece of paper with a lot of words in it? We want to be able to look down here and start checking things off. I like checking accomplish something, right? And I think overall that's what we want to support. But I really am interested in the metrics that we want to send, how we're accomplishing these things. Are we just looking at the line and saying, did we do that thing, or are there steps along the way that we're missing that we need to do in order to accomplish that task? I'm not sure if you've gotten to that place, and because I know you've got a small committee, and we're just trying to re-up this, in a more meaningful way with, now that we have a little bit more capacity. Have we established what those metrics are? Do you need our help in establishing those metrics? And then report back to us. I'd love to talk about this quarterly personally. I think that would be helpful to keep it forward in our minds. But I'm flexible if something comes up along the way and we're out of space for it to
Well, we're here on Wednesday, aren't we?
And that's okay. I mean, it's
Yeah.
meant for work session.
In fact. And I think that one thing I'll do, an addendum to that, is that we do talk about the strategic plan every time we have an order, every time we have a work session and discussion, because really anything that we do is a part of the strategic plan. And what the quarterly message would be was how has what we've done affected the strategic plan, how we move it measurably forward, how we actually perform to the measurements that we establish. I love that thought. Question?
So there was a question.
Yeah.
Oh, there was a question.
Yeah, briefly respond to that. It's Chair, I'm sure about. We just started with the committee, and I asked if there could be an expansion as well, and I would love if there's interest at the board to do a review as well. I think we have a mix in the 74, and some of where we identify these buckets, we have a mix in what we're all used to. I'd say our organization is used to a mix of action-oriented initiatives, like implement this plan. And then there's some more specific, like reduced waste by this percent by. So I think we use that effectively. So while we don't want to change that, I think this 2-bucket approach will help so that we can perhaps modify some of these a little bit so that they're a little bit more outcome goal oriented, so that we can have outcome based measures that align to those. If it's just create this plan or implement this, we could do a quick checkbox, yes, no, we close to it, but those outcomes are like, how did we actually do? That's where it takes up time, and so we try to with the facilitator and really kind of incorporating some of these metrics, so we have draft measures that are in there that I think a majority of those are really good ones that we could possibly keep. But there might just be some tweaking, so we're close, and I think there's a desire and at least a good team efforts to try and make this work so that we're doing this well this time.
Vice Chair?
So I'm just waiting to see if,
Yeah, I'm anxious to hear just your initial.
I've got a little bit to unpack, so you go ahead.
Yeah,
okay, just appreciation as always, because, you know, one thing that this is not, every single one of these strategies has a work plan that goes with it, right? And our job isn't at that work plan level, so I know there's a ton that goes into that. And, you know, as an example, the item right before we got to this item on our agenda of authorizing letters to start a process to maybe get federal financial support for some projects, that level of specificity isn't in here. So it's important that we keep it. It's that constant push-pull between the keeping the plan high level enough to allow staff to take advantage of opportunities as they come up, but specific enough to know that you're following a strategic policy direction. So that's the constant, right? It's the constant challenge and push-pull that I just wanted to state and appreciate. And as the chair said, this is a live plan for every board packet. When there's an order, it refers to what element of the strategic plan does this order help relate to or fulfill. So I think we do a really good job as an organization of actually having a plan that we use. If part of what I heard your question is how iterative to be in terms of bringing it back to the board for adaptation or adjustment and also reporting. And I do like the idea of quarterly because there's so much going on. But I'm also wondering, to me, in some ways, our budget process sort of is a strategic plan check-in reflection, right? There's no point in allocating resource without a direction. It's the strategic plan. So we could sort of say, your Samuel reports are 2, budget process is a 3rd, really only adding 1 more. Or if we think about the budget as a way of confirming our commitment to the direction that we've given in the strategic plan. As the only other thing I had at this point on the measures, and this is sort of strategic plan nerdy talk, but being really clear on the difference between outputs and outcomes. So we can just report a bunch of numbers on how many, we're a factory, how many widgets we produced, but those are outputs. The outcomes is more people were able to, whatever the thing is those widgets get used for. There was actually the measurable impact, the lives that we improved in a way. So being really thoughtful about, and I don't know yet, how much do I want to know about outputs versus outcomes? I know I want to know about outcomes. The other stuff, I don't want to make busy work for y'all to go tracking data down and presenting it in a way. If it's not useful at our strategic thinking policy direction level, it's useful at the staff and work plan level to get that capacity. That's my first
good job, Vice Chair. Particularly reiterating, I'll give you about the work plans, that we don't get deeply involved in the work plans. We get reports on the work plans, and sometimes we give input as to policies work. The work plan is very personal to the people actually doing the job, which is what true sort of budget management is all about, is people doing the job, how to do the job. So, ready, Ryan?
Yeah, just real quick, I was wondering, do you have the previous priorities and objectives list? Is that still around?
It is, yeah.
I wouldn't mind looking at that just to kind of see where we're at, what direction the board's headed, and what was prioritized.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's a lot. Great job.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Again, Judy, super presentation. Thanks for not reading every slide, and that was refreshing. And the fact that you interviewed 800 employees and surveyed with forums and input was probably better than what surveys we get in the political arena these days at all. So I thought that was really great that you did that much depth. As you were talking, I was reminded of this quote that I read in a book a while back. It said, "Without vision, people perish, and when the law is kept, communities flourish." So I thought about that the whole time you were talking about these strategic goals. And so I'm here to just kind of not pass along my personal opinions about the things I'm about ready to tell you, but just what I've heard in conversation from my constituents. You know, I represent the district of Springfield, and we're kind of one of those districts that I'm proud to say we don't really care what happens as long as we get the job done. We don't care who you are or what your background is, or we don't try to divide, we just conquer. That's what we do. And so I appreciate my district in that. I noticed over the priorities though that I want to kind of highlight something for us all to look at. Affordable housing obviously was the big ticket. I think that from my perspective in having this conversation 1,000 times over the last couple of years, I really believe that branding on this particular identity is important, because I think the word affordable misleads people. I think that we're misleading people by saying there is such thing as affordable housing. I've said it before, housing costs are housing costs. And I think we need to retweak that statement a little bit so that people can be more realistic in what they expect from us. Because I think what people do is when they look at affordable housing, they expect somehow that government is going to make it more affordable, when in fact, they are going to make it more affordable by subsidizing. So I think that that needs a little clearer understanding. I also thought that it was interesting that the priorities were on both sides. Were the third place priority was crime. And as you know, that's something that we're going to have to face going forward as a strategic plan, not just as an outline plan, but as something we attack with both fingers and toes, is that we're going to have to get a handle on our crime because it's unraveling as we speak. Then I really thought it was interesting that fifth down the list was small business. And what's interesting about a strategic plan is when the economic viability of a county, which is in my district, 80% small business, why that is fifth on the priority list, when indeed small business would cure, or not cure, but at least give positivity to a lot of these ails that we find ourselves in, that if small business was flourishing and communities were flourishing, we'd have housing, we'd have less crime, we'd have more money for such and such. And so I thought that was kind of interesting, that it almost felt like constituents were putting the blame and responsibility on government to solve the things that a viable and robust economy would. So I think that should be part of our strategic plan focus. Is we really, as a Lane County, we need to consider the fact that how we're attracting and repelling business in Lane County to achieve the goals that are wonderful goals in there. These are great goals and I love them. And I think every time we make a decision, as the chair said, and the vice chair reiterated as well, and so did Commissioner Buck, that it's good that we do these things and weigh them. But without business and without us having citizens that agree to obey the law, our communities are not going to flourish because the blame's going to be put on us. So I think we need to tweak that a little bit. And a few more things if you got a few more minutes. The robust infrastructure, when it says broadband data and disaster recovery, I think I agree with Commissioner Trieger when she says sometimes we get, and Commissioner Buck when they said sometimes we get things checked off. Obviously, the last 2 years with disaster recovery, that was a huge goal. And now that we've got kind of a handle on that, and Patience is one of those best people around to really get, I mean, I think we've almost checked that box off in a way, I think, in a lot of ways. And so maybe that needs to be readjusted to something else. I'm not sure what that is. But broadband data certainly is one that we should continue to pursue. So that just, I think that statement needs a little updating in my opinion. And then the people, the organizational health, this is what I've been getting feedback from. So please don't misunderstand how I'm presenting this. I'm going to present this in the best way I know how. I'm getting a lot of input on diversity, equity, inclusion, the DEI things that we're doing. Most of the conversations I have with people, I think people get it. I think we've made that very clear with people. I think we've made our purpose and our intent with diversity, equity, inclusion very clear. And I think people are feeling beaten over the head with it. I think maybe we may have gone a little too far with that. I think what I've been hearing is the DEI agenda has pushed out the culture of the workforce. And so what I mean by that is when I was in the Navy, I was with the Blue Angels. I was a backseat aerial photographer, and I had to be fit. I had to have no mustache. My hair had to be cut a certain way. My uniform always had to be pressed and my shoes shined. And I had to be the same person I was on the base as I was in public. Now, Battleship Navy, those guys look like they pulled their t-shirts out of their bootstraps and they never shave and they smell like the bottom of the ship. But they can send a Volkswagen 23 miles over the horizon with pinpoint accuracy. It's two different cultures, same Navy, same mission. So I think we need to respect that within our county culture. We have a culture. I don't expect somebody who wears a bun who graduated in chemistry to like shoveling asphalt into a hole in the middle of August. That takes a certain culture. And I think we need to honor the culture of our workforces. I think some of the cultures of our workforce has been strongly opinionated toward me and wanted me to present this at this time, that they think that maybe the culture of their workforce is being drowned out by something that looks, for lack of better words, virtuous. Okay, so I think we need to really strongly look at that and figure out where we want to go with that in the future. 3 more things if I can. The vision, I think the vision of Lane County is the best county in which we all live, work, and play. I'm totally on board with that. I love that statement, and I'm gonna print that on a hoodie and wear it all over town. I think that's a great vision. The purpose to improve lives. Let's keep again on our vision is that people that I've been talking to, they want to make sure that all lives are preserved. I think sometimes we get excited about helping marginalized groups, and some of the people that are in mainstream, what we consider non-marginalized groups, feel marginalized. So I think we need to be really careful about that as we move forward with our strategic plan, that we don't go overboard with it. I mean, there's a balance in everything. So this is what I'm hearing from my constituents. Core behaviors, love them, love, serve, connect, focus solutions, all that, great. And the lenses, our stewardship as pillar, I wrote in my notes, heck yeah. We should be good stewards of what we have, because Ms. Morkreisky, you guys do a great job with budgeting and staff, and everybody's running the shoestring, and stewardship is going to be the pillar thing that we need to focus on. So I totally agree with that. The last thing is just a collective impact. Like I said before about the impact or the conversations I've been getting about diversity, equity, inclusion, is we need to kind of understand when we over delineate. Now, what I mean by that is sometimes when we purposefully set apart some people, we purposely disinclude others. And so I just want to make sure that we're cognizant of that. I don't know if that requires us to adjust a strategic goal, but I just think sometimes we just need to kind of just take a breath and maybe dial back some of that things that we exercise on marginalized class. And then lastly, I want to say this. I think somewhere in our strategic plan, we should add this to it. Lane County needs to be excellent. Lane County needs to be agile. Lane County needs to constantly remind itself of its purpose. And when I say that, what I think somewhere should be in the strategic plan is that people expect government to act, but we expect our constituents to be part of it. I think that's an important thing that we left out in the strategic plan that needs to be brought in somehow, some way, tactfully. Maybe it's not the way I just said it, but everywhere I turn and on the campaign trail, even until today, people are expecting us to do something. But this is not a government of the government. It's a government of the people, by the people, for the people. And so in our strategic plan, we should say, yep, as a government body, you expect us to act, but as people, we expect you to participate. So that's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'll step in with you for a second now. The first thing I'm going to say is about marginalization of marginalized people. What really punches me in the face is that I don't even know what people have been marginalized their entire life, real life. I don't, and when I get glimpses of it every now and then, sometimes it's through my family and sometimes it's through friends of my family. People who don't even know that they are legally allowed to ask for things. I don't even know how to ask for things. And that's one of the things that we're is making it so that people know what they can ask for. People don't even apply for jobs because they don't think they're able to get a job. Those are very real things. It's tangible. I've witnessed it. I've seen it. I've heard it. I put my arms around it and say, yes, you can. And so for me, when we look at people who are marginalized, I personally, I come from the north of England. I was always marginalized by people on the south, always. The Anglos ran the country. They taught me to speak their language, but it's not the same thing. It's not the same thing as not believing you can even aspire to something, but not believing you can even hope for something, trust, never had it. Your parents didn't have it, and why would I even be able to understand that? So that's a part of what I look at personally, and I'm only talking about me personally. And we're looking at trying to serve the needs of people who have been historically overwhelmingly marginalized. But how can we give them just the personal belief that they can move into it? That's at the very base level. You know, beyond that, you know, equity and access and diversity and inclusion. But those are all words we use. But really, the gut level feeling that I have witnessed but not felt it, but I've seen it. I've seen it in people's eyes. And I've not asked for that. This, I've never had it. Why would I have to believe that? But to me, that is really a part of what enters into that. And so, but the one thing I really wanted to say about this meeting is that there's a new thing that really is kind of captivating the nation, and every place I go, we're talking about it. And that is the intersection. Are we going to go with this? Of behavioral health, criminal justice, you know, and commercial level, you're talking about public safety, about crime, and so often that's where the criminal, what is perceived as criminal activity occurs at that intersection. And so, Steve, I don't know how we begin to weave this in. I think it's throughout the strategic plan already, but saying those words and understanding that not taking people to jail is often the best thing to do. But guess what we do? We take them to jail anyway. Sometimes not forcing them in the emergency room is the best thing to do, but we take them to the emergency room anyway. So how do we free up other resources by addressing that particular area? And that's as an aside. Commercial level, you said a lot of things that really all are very worthy of listening to and talking about at length. So let's not lose track of anything that you said. Don't let what I just said inhibit that by any means, because of all the things that I wanted to talk about today, it was that intersection of criminal justice and behavioral health. Make certain that we are continuing to address this in ways that you said in the mental health summit back there. You saw how everybody was there paying attention. Now, they didn't pay much attention to our video when it was up there because they were talking among themselves. But that video got streamed live at a national level. We were watching it. And there's such a high intensity of focus on, and a part of it is mobile crisis response. That's a small part of it, but really, how do we free up resources that are currently being devoured at the intersection of criminal justice and behavioral health, and free them up for actually serving people and Steve making lives better. So, for the discussion. Sorry. Commissioner Buck, yeah.
You may be relating to this, but you know, my questions really are, so next steps on, you know, obviously reviewing this, adding input, and in coming up with some organizational metrics. What do you need from us at this point? I think you've gotten, you know, some general feedback, but we also need to have some time to review these things and
yeah, I appreciate the discussion so far, and I think that we've largely accomplished what I would say my desires were, which is to have a level setting, right, around, let's make sure all five of you understand the background and history of this. And are you generally on board with what we have articulated here? And I'm hearing yes. But also, again, I'll just say this is a living, breathing document. So, you know, it is subject to change always. And I think it's good, you know, as you continue to review and think and go through your various committee meetings and board meetings and feedback from constituents, that you continue to think about this and where there are gaps that need to be filled or adjustments that need to be made, things added or taken off. As Judy said, you You know, we are trying to make this a little bit more manageable. Just when we come back to it, it's all about focus, right? We're focused on 1,000 different things, and you're having to think about 1,000 different, you can't really be effective. So everyone's got to focus on sort of the areas that are most important for you to do so. Commissioner Farr, I just want to say to your point about the nexus between behavioral health, if you look under that strategic priority goal, priority number 1, Safe Healthy County, and objective A says focus on people at the intersection of behavioral health, homelessness, and public safety to provide crisis stabilization, support, and treatment. And then we have 4.
Maybe that's where we got that word.
It just, you know, but that is the point. It's like, okay, is that reflected in here? Or does this articulate what the board wants to see? I think the conversation also about, you know, Mr. Trigger, what's an outcome versus an output? How are we tracking and measuring these? You know, if you look at some of them, some of these are very clearly outcome. It's very easy to measure. Complete a funding plan for a community behavioral health crisis stabilization center in partnership with community organizations. Like, that's fairly easy to measure success, right? Check the box if we have either done that or not. It's a big lift, but we've either developed the plan for how we're going to fund the construction and operations, or we haven't. Conversely, this number 1 on their objective base says gain a perspective from people with the highest needs and highest users of the systems to make sure the system is serving their needs. Well, that one's a little bit more difficult, right? So I mean, I think just, you know, some of these are going to be easier to track and say, yes, we did, or no, we didn't accomplish, and others are maybe sort more flexible, ongoing, dynamic, subjective, and you know, so I think that's just an opportunity for us to sort of see, is that working, is that not working? But I would say overall this was good. We were not looking for action and let's add this, let's take that off. We just want to get a general sense of the starting point. And I'm sensing like, yeah, this is a good place to be at, and we have more work to do to dial it in and focus it and report on it and, you know, make some adjustments. And so we will want, as it relates to changes, we'll definitely want specific direction. So as you move forward and you're feeling like as individuals and as a body, changes do need to be made, we need to hear that, right? Because what we heard today was a lot of individual perspectives. And then over time, those individual perspectives need to become direction from the board.
Perfect.
Okay.
So, Heather, next steps.
Oh, yes, you asked next steps. Okay. George, I
There's a question in there.
didn't answer. I said a lot.
You said that out great, sorry.
Judy will give that a shot.
Shot. Thank you. And I think, so we have a small team identified, and it is literally going through some of those, like, what are those check the box ones? And any feedback on, again, on the gray ones and what's in what bucket would be helpful too, so that we can take the time to get the board level bucket ones at a level where it is measurable, where we're gonna see that outcome, and see the success or not success and work on that. So I think this small team is devoted, and it's like a good group of people that are the right minds. It takes a bit of work, and it's, you know, counting widgets and counting numbers, and to try and really get at, like, here's our goal, which is quite all encompassing. How do we really get into the language so that it's clear what we're measuring, and then what data is available, what's not, how do we do that? So my hope is, well, we do have like a May, I'm trying to think, you know, the budget process, you're going to be seeing some of the department goals and measures that are aligned and connected, and you'll be seeing those through the budget presentations in May. It might be a good time, like right at that time, to, you know, we're continuing to work with the departments and tweak those, but we'll be working towards that next report back to you with like a final draft, and maybe just weighing in on here's what we have now, let's take another final look at it before we just set things in stone and then move forward. So maybe like right after that, maybe.
I know we, at least the last one, maybe a couple of budget cycles, we really shifted in terms of presentation away from a look back at past performance and rather a forecast and anticipation of what the needs are coming up in the organization and community and what are the resources it's going to take to get us there. So I'm just trying to think about how do we do that with the strategic plan too? Because to me, that's what keeps it dynamic and moving forward instead of this sort of static thing that we can go back and say, did we? Yep, and then here we are, so what? Instead of how is this the fuel that moves us? And I'm just reminded that we made that shift of what we asked of staff the budget, and it seemed to really help us make better decisions and have better conversations. So whatever we can borrow from that framework to apply here, I think
Thank you all. This has been, again, really helpful and great feedback, and any kind of questions or feedback is kind of feedback. Thank you.
Well, one last thing I'll mention is that we have names on the screen up there, and Sheriff Harold just dropped off, but department directors, two elected officials, Patty Curlo and Sheriff Harold, will listen to this entire conversation. And really, as we develop our strategic plan, certainly you hear from the 5 commissioners, and we tend to be focused in our own particular areas, but really the people who are actually doing the work, particularly the 2 elected officials that are up on the screen right there, who are elected by as many people as all 5 of us combined, because they represent the entire county. When we talk about our constituents, I talk about kind of North, used to talk about North Eugene, but they talk about the entire county. And so really, I think it's really dreadfully important that we continue to listen to them and continue to listen to what the needs are as we try to find ways to shore up our district attorney's department, to shore up the ability to prosecute criminal activity that is prosecutable, the ability to conduct rural patrol and get out to people so they don't have to sit in the bathroom on 911 saying, yeah, I've got an intruder in my room, in my house right now. Can you send somebody else? I will fill out a report. You know, that's some of the things that they see every day. We don't accept things that are commonplace to us, you know, bumpy roads, whatever it may be. We don't accept, you know, an inability to serve people in our health centers. But what they're not accepting is, what they are accepting is people whose lives are in jeopardy at this moment in time. You know, and frustration of not being able to respond to that. It's got to be tangible. You know, it's got to be tangible, something like palpable. You know, that. So anyway, I think you know, as we work on strategic planning, we have to make certain that all the elected officials are a part of sitting at the table and making certain that their needs are at least heard and in any way that we can in our meeting.
Good question.
Please.
I think we have ideas on this, which do we just meet our thing?
That would be
One I can next meeting.
Yeah, at any time, and I can connect with the staff that's working on that item, and we can, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, well, thank you for kind of the start of the work, right? Anything else before we adjourn? Next meeting is 9 a.m. on Tuesday morning. Everyone have a good weekend, and we are adjourned.